little company called Apple. You may use one of their phones. Let's talk about it. Bring in the man, the myth, and the legend joining us now. Don't cross your, look at, he crossed his arms. He's like all ready to fight. Herb Greenberg, editor of Herb Greenberg on the Street. I'm having flashbacks, although that may just be the mushrooms. Who knows, Herb? Let's start with Apple. Why is Apple on your radar?
Well, if you look at Apple and you see what's going on with Apple in China, you could argue, as I have, that maybe Apple is a pawn in a big game of chess being played between the United States and China. And I say that because shortly after the tariffs were slapped on the last time around, a week or two ago, China, there were stories starting to rumble through. I know Bloomberg had a story about China saying it had some, it was going to start probing the App Store issues dealing with Apple. That App Store issue is an App Store tax, as people call it, which effectively is the 30% Apple charges publishers, developers, and others to have their apps on Apple. So the real question you get to here is this. As this thing moves forward, and as you see China become less and less part of Apple's business, does China try to freeze Apple out of China? It's just something I think you have to watch. And, and if you do look at that, or if you do see that Apple tax retrenching, that app is actually, a decent amount of revenue for Apple, but it's even more profit. So it starts to have even more impact at a company where people have wondered. And I use Apple products. I love Apple products. Has it lost its mojo?
No, I'll say this as somebody who's been to China a couple of times. When the Chinese government effectively dictates something, I'm not dictating you use a Huawei or whatever phone, but when they sort of semi-dictate it, there's a lot of public pressure. We don't face that here in the States, but there's a lot of top-down pressure to maybe not be seen with specific stuff. All right, speaking of phones, let's pivot to shoes. How'd you like that transition, Herb Greenberg?
Wonderful,
Deckers,
wonderful.
They make Uggs, they make Hoka, which makes everybody 3 inches taller. What's your beef with Deckers?
It's not a beef. Remember, these are risks you want to pay attention to. That's what I like to do, is point out the risks. You could start seeing, if you look at the stock, Deckers has been a fantastic investment for many people. Hoka is a great product. Uggs, great product. Done phenomenally well in the marketplace. But you can start seeing changes in the filings and the disclosures the company has been putting in its filings. I called out one in June, where the company basically used to say it would report its pairs, the volume of pairs sold. It changed the word pairs to the volume of units sold, which reflects the fact that they're moving more away from shoes. As I start talking to folks, even before this last quarter, which was not a dismal quarter, the guidance was terrible, you could see where there were starting to be some accounting issues that were starting to concern some of the people I talked to. And then after this most recent quarter, if you look in the 10Q, interestingly enough, as it refers to its international business, it talks about, it adds the word outsized. That's very important. Outsized to the, when it's talking about Hoka's wholesale sales internationally. The importance of that is wholesale is sell in, not sell through. Hoka's a really hot product. Does that suggest they're stuffing the channel internationally with Hoka's? I'm not saying they are, but that word outsized is new. It's worth paying attention to. And I think therein lies a risk going forward with Decker.
Herb, let's posit that Hoka's growth is slowing because it simply just became so popular and saturated and what have you. Then the company should be doing what? I mean, trying to look for other brands that they paid, it was like a couple $100 million, maybe less, for Hoka and turned it into this incredibly valuable franchise. Are they going to have to find a way to do that again?
Well, you grow through acquisition only takes you so far. It's really, in their case, just how far can that one brand go? Or, remember, Uggs is doing very well, too. Uggs is their other big shoe brand. But in terms of Hoka, what you start looking at is the competition Hoka has brought upon itself, because Hoka's done so well. If you start looking at running shoes or walking shoes or whatever shoes you have, everyone out there has a Hoka product that they're emulating. And that, to me, is a very important part of it. Again, they're potentially victims of their own success.
Yeah. Well, let's move along and talk a little bit of Super Bowl, by which is only to say, and Brian, maybe you can tell us, this Hims ad, did you actually see it, the Hims ad?
Yeah, I did.
And they're poking Herb kind of at the big pharma companies and kind of saying, you're the problem and we're the solution here, but do you think there's more to the story?
I think there's a tremendous amount to the story. Look, I've red flagged this company when the stock was half of where it is today. So don't I look like the chump? But if you look at the stock right now, this stock is up not because of fundamentals. It's up because of a short squeeze, the mother of all short squeezes, as they like to say. And that's fine as long as the fundamentals follow it out. And the company's going to report earnings pretty soon. They're going to report fantastic numbers because everyone looks at the credit card data and it shows it's going to be fantastic because of the GLP-1 drugs. But there's a battle going on under the surfaces between the FDA and the company and the pharma, the drug companies and the company over their ability to sell compounded versions of these GLP-1s.